There is a certain kind of silence that exists only in the coldest places on earth. It is not an empty silence. It is a heavy silence, filled with the weight of ice, the memory of forgotten winds, and the ghosts of those who dared to challenge it. This is a story about that silence, and about the 129 souls who sailed into it, and never, ever sailed out. Our story begins with the thunderous applause of a confident empire. The year is 1845. Victorian England is at the apex of its power. The British Navy rules the waves, and there is one last great prize to be claimed, one final line to be drawn on the map of the world, the legendary Northwest Passage. A sea route through the treacherous labyrinth of the Canadian Arctic that would connect the Atlantic to the Pacific. It was the moonshot of its day, a quest that had consumed explorers and claimed lives for centuries. To conquer it, the Admiralty spared no expense. They chose two of their finest ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. These were not ordinary wooden vessels. They were bomb ships, built with reinforced hulls designed to withstand the brutal punishment of cannon fire, and now the crushing power of polar ice. They were refitted with the latest technology, steam engines to power them through frozen channels, and a system of hot water pipes for the crew's comfort. Their storerooms were packed with a 3-year supply of provisions, including over 80,000 pounds of tinned food, a marvel of modern preservation. And at their helm, a national hero, Captain Sir John Franklin, a veteran of the Napoleonic Wars and a seasoned Arctic explorer. With him were 128 of the Royal Navy's most capable officers and men. On May 19, 1845, they sailed from London, a vision of industrial might and imperial confidence, cheered on by crowds who had no doubt they would return as conquerors. In late July, they were spotted by 2 whaling ships in Baffin Bay on the edge of the ice. The officers were in high spirits. They invited the whalers for dinner, and then the Erebus and Terror sailed west into the glittering white maze of the Arctic and vanished. 1 year passed, then 2. Silence. The Admiralty grew concerned. By 1848, the silence had become a deafening roar of absence. What followed was one of the largest and longest search and rescue operations in human history. Dozens of ships, funded by the government by public subscription and by Franklin's own fiercely determined wife, Lady Jane Franklin, sailed into the Arctic, searching for a trace of the lost men. The first clues were found in 1850 on Beechey Island. 3 lonely graves, perfectly preserved in the permafrost, belonging to 3 of Franklin's crewmen who had died during the first winter. There were signs of a well-organized winter camp, but no message, no note indicating where the expedition had gone next. It was a discovery that only deepened the mystery. Where were the other 126 men and their 2 high-tech ships? The true, horrifying answer would not come from the British Navy, but from the people who had lived in the Arctic for centuries, the Inuit. Explorer John Ray, while surveying for the Hudson's Bay Company, began hearing chilling stories from local Inuit hunters. Stories of a group of white men, sick and starving, staggering south over the ice years earlier. The Inuit had seen them dragging heavy sledges, their faces gaunt, their minds broken. They described a scene of utter desperation. And then they described something else, something that would scandalize Victorian England. They spoke of finding bodies in the snow, of corpses with flesh carved from their bones. They spoke of the ultimate human taboo, cannibalism. The Victorian public was horrified. They refused to believe their naval heroes could resort to such savagery. But the evidence was undeniable. Scattered relics, silver spoons, buttons, a medal belonging to Franklin himself, all confirmed the stories were about the lost expedition. The men had abandoned their ice-locked ships and made a desperate, doomed death march south. But what had gone so wrong? How could a perfectly supplied, technologically advanced expedition collapse into such a nightmare? The modern answer, found frozen in the graves on Beechy Island, is perhaps the most tragic irony of all. The very technology that was meant to sustain them had poisoned them. Modern autopsies on the preserved bodies of the crewmen revealed shockingly high levels of lead. The source? The thousands of tins of food, shoddily soldered together in a rush to meet the contract deadline. From their very first meal, the men of the Franklin expedition were slowly, inexorably being poisoned. The lead would have ravaged their bodies, causing weakness, paranoia, and madness, making them incapable of making the rational decisions needed to survive in the world's harshest. A cascade of failures, a harsh winter that trapped the ships in ice, the lead poisoning that weakened the men, and the inevitable onset of starvation and scurvy had created a perfect storm of death. For over a century and a half, that was where the story ended. A chilling tale, a mystery locked in the ice. Until now, in 2014, a Canadian search team, using a combination of advanced sonar and ancient Inuit oral history, found what the world had been looking for. Resting in the shallow, frigid waters of Queen Maud Gulf was a ghost. Intact, upright, and perfectly preserved in the freezing water was the HMS Erebus. 2 years later, its sister ship, the HMS Terror, was found in a nearby bay in even more pristine condition. The ships are not wrecks. They are time capsules, submerged museums of a lost world. Divers exploring their silent cabins have found plates stacked neatly, scientific instruments waiting to be used, and personal belongings left exactly where their owners last placed them. But they have not yet found the one thing that could tell the full story, the ship's logbook. And they have not found the grave of Sir John Franklin himself. The discovery of the ships solved one mystery, but it deepened another. It gave us the location of their graves, but it brought us no closer to the final thoughts of the men entombed within them. It shows us how they died, but it cannot fully explain the horrors they endured in their final days. The silent ships of the Franklin expedition are a profound and humbling monument. They are a monument to the courage of exploration, but also to the fatal blindness of pride. They are a ghost story written in ice, a warning that the wilderness is always more powerful than our technology, and that the line between civilization and savagery is terrifyingly thin. We have found their ships, but their souls and their secrets still belong to the silence.